Hi, my name is Elshehaly, and this presentation is about the Digital Makers program, which builds on the strong evidence base applied by the Born in Bradford study and bringing partnerships both at the executive level and the operational level from local authority to central government to a number of industry partners with a keen interest to digitally upskill every secondary school student in Bradford. And the reason that there's this interest in digital skills and digital literacies particularly is that they have been described and identified as super determinants of health and well-being, given that a lot of the opportunities and most of the programs of support for housing, from housing to healthcare to employment, are almost now exclusively accessible online. So this would have been good news if this would bring this access to these types of services that improve a person's health and well-being to the hands of our most deprived communities. Unfortunately, this is not the case given a severe digital divide that exists worldwide, but also very prominent in the most deprived areas, particularly in Bradford. And we know from evidence that the assumption that access to online resources alone or access to devices or internet connectivity alone does not quite enable everyone. And that is due to a number of cultural, psychological, environmental factors that play into the divide. And we know that also socioeconomic status is a leading cause of the digital divide. So it's almost like a vicious cycle. We also know from evidence that there's a number of issues that come at the intersection of these cultural, psychological, and environmental factors, including things like cognitive skill building, self-efficacy, language barriers, culturally acceptable content, issues of mistrust towards governments or tech companies, interpersonal relationships. So there's been evidence, for example, that Latino communities in the United States put higher value on interpersonal relationships and the sense of collectivism as a community, and there's sometimes the perception that technology can come in the way of these higher values for the society. So there's lots of different bits and pieces that have been reported in the literature about this digital divide and what kind of factors contribute to the characterization of it. But particularly in Bradford, we have a great opportunity to look at many of these factors as they interface and interact with one another. Mainly because this is the youngest city in the UK. There's a huge diversity, both ethnic, religious, cultural diversity. And we also have a lot of the challenges that really make it a possible exemplar, if you will, for identifying the root causes of some of the issues that are facing particularly ethnic minorities and people in the most deprived areas. So we know that employment rates in Bradford are well below the national average. We know that skill levels are well below the national average. And we also know that there is a great deal of deprivation in many of the localities. So a majority, or actually a large number of the schools, fall within the highest areas of deprivation according to the index of multiple deprivation here in the UK. But data can tell us a lot more about Bradford, given the wealth and the incredible infrastructure that is provided through the Born in Bradford study and connected Bradford data, which links together primary and secondary care, healthcare data, along with community care, criminal records, housing and benefits, environmental data, social care data, and education data. So really brings this opportunity to develop a whole systems approach to looking at a person's digital skills and the impact of these digital skills on their health and well-being in a holistic manner. And this whole systems approach at the moment looks like this. So it has two streams. One is around bringing a situation analysis and understanding of the digital divide to our policymakers and our local government officials. So we're looking at data solutions, including visual analytics, machine learning, and linking different routine data with empirical data to ensure that they really have a characterization and a full understanding of where and when and how is the digital divide really impacting our children and young people. The second sort of arm of this is the intervention delivery. So we're working closely with Raspberry Pi. We're working with researchers from computer science education to look at how we can co-produce programs of delivery within every secondary school in Bradford to introduce computer science as a subject, but also as an extracurricular through coding clubs and different sort of delivery activities. We're also looking at building capacity and improving access to these resources within the schools. But most importantly, we're looking at the experiences of children and young people as they get introduced to these concepts. And a huge part of these experiences is obviously having to do with immersive technologies, particularly because we know from evidence that a lot of the issues that have been identified as characteristics of the digital divide can be tackled through the use of immersive technologies. So we know, for example, that interface design in a virtual space can create pro-social interaction norms that can tackle those issues around mistrust or around that sense of collectivism and social and interpersonal relationships. We also know that the choice of avatar improves collaborative learning and interpersonal trust. So we know that there's a lot of potential for immersive technologies to really bridge the gap of the digital divide. We've seen this firsthand in our pilot program during the summer at the National Science and Media Museum. And the beautiful faces that you're looking at here are the children, young people who have participated in the program. Some of the children were coming from the most deprived areas of Bradford, and you could see immediately that element of participation and experiences as they experienced virtual spaces through their interaction with immersive technologies, and along with a number of activities, including Raspberry Pi Coding Club. They had talks by STEM ambassadors from companies like Boeing and Microsoft. And we had a co-production session with the children, young people, asking them what they perceive as the most critical factors that are impacting their digital experiences. And how is it that they perceive this research as being something that is going to change their lives. Thank you very much for listening.